there's been an ongoing discussion about labor and people crossing the border, and that I've heard this for years, and it's really bothered me that somehow people are wanting just cheap labor as if these people work cheap, and they don't. And I got a letter from the show last week, or an email from a listener that was telling me that the thing that we need to start doing is using local labor and stop using these people crossing the border because they're cheap labor. Well, that is the furthest thing from the truth. Nobody is cheap labor. There's no such thing anymore. And builders have a different perspective on labor. We don't care, honestly, we don't care who they are, what they look like, where they came from. We're interested in their skill sets, and we're interested in people that are hardworking. And that's essentially as complicated as it gets for us. And so I asked my friend Alan Hoffmann, Hoffmann Homes, to join me today. And this, in our first segment, I wanted to discuss this because I have a perspective from the 1980s when I went in business, officially went in business. I've been doing this since the 70s. And so I've worked with all kinds of people, all colors. First of all, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
It's great to have you again.
It's nice to be here.
Alan builds ICF Homes in Dallas, and he is a very well-respected, and he was the past president of the Dallas Builders Association. I could go on all day about his qualifications, but Alan and I used to run at each other. I think maybe we kind of met at City Hall in Dallas when we were both down there barking at the powers that be about the things we didn't like that they were doing. So we've been through a lot of stuff together. So in the 80s, labor was local. Basically, all of our cleanup crews, our framing crews, all of our labor was sort of local. And then some things happened, and I think it was politically, but some things happened. And all of a sudden, we had this influx of people coming from over the border and coming up and joining the labor force. And I think maybe back then, they were probably getting paid a lot less. I don't remember. Because people like you and I don't deal with the individual. We don't pay the individual. We pay his boss. We pay the guy that owns the company. I don't know what he's paying him. Yeah. But I know that what I was getting was people that were willing to do pretty much anything, that worked hard, were good people, fantastic people. Even though we didn't even speak the same language half the time, we still get along great and respect each other. And so when people tell me, well, you guys are just wanting this cheap labor, I'm like, go to Home Depot. Go ask a day laborer what he wants to go work on your job for a day, and you will find out real quick, they don't work cheap. There's no such thing as cheap labor anymore. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, we work with pretty much established contractors that have been here a long time, and many of them grew up in that time frame in the trade and learned the business on the job. And my perspective is, if they're highly skilled, first of all, they're all local now anyway because they've been here 30, 40 years.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And secondly, given my perspective in the current economy and what we've been dealing with over the past several years, is there has not been this huge influx and desire from local, national trades to get into our industry.
We quit teaching our kids trades in the 90s.
Yes, all these programs, everybody needed to learn math and science and literature, and that was it.
Yeah.
anything really became in our industry, the skilled work that you did with your hands became viewed as less than in the educational system.
I mean, they were telling their kids that if they didn't go to college, they were going to fail. You can't survive if you don't get a college
fail
degree.
in life,
Yeah.
not just, not just, at school, life.
Yeah, go to college, or
Yeah,
you might end up having to work for a living
yeah.
with your hands.
Well, the
We
thing
all work.
is, I view work as, if you love what you're doing and you love doing it every day, you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
So if you love the work that you do, it's not work. And I just think that we have, right now, I've got a very skilled contractor base that I value extremely, and they are paid very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a perspective that our current labor base is being shortchanged at all. Now, there's bad players.
Sure.
In any world,
Sure.
in
Of
any
course.
in any
Of
corner.
course. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we focus on we want to deliver a better product. So
Right.
that's and we want to use the subs that we feel are
Well, and listen, the liabilities are too high.
yes.
There's too much at risk to have to come in and do bad work or do crappy work. I mean, we went through all this in the 70s and 80s when there was a huge building boom. We had a couple of setbacks with the savings and loans and all that kind of saving loan.
There was a lot
recession.
of money chasing a lot of deals. So
And people were were largely unregulated. And so a lot of the what got me in business was fixing the problems that those people started. But I still see them. I still see them all the time. I'm sure you do too.
let me tell you, I was in the 90s. I was managing apartments and doing deferred maintenance on apartments that hadn't seen a lick of maintenance for 15 years.
Well, and started out being built like crap, and then
Yes.
you end up going, well, I hope it stands through a strong wind. But there was a lot of shenanigans going on, is my point. And so, there was people that were using cheap labor. They were cutting corners. They're doing all the wrong things. But for most of us, we don't do that. My subs are my family. I literally sit down half the time I walk out on a job site, and they're sitting there cooking their lunch in the microwave, and they'll invite me to sit down with them and eat lunch.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do. And so I wanted to sort of dispel this myth that we're somehow an industry that operates on cheap labor, because I don't believe there is such a thing as cheap labor at this point, if they're qualified to do the job.
Yeah, and I understand and see what you're saying, and I agree with it completely. I also want to add that as an industry, we are basically on the creative side. We actually make something. We're not making. We're not doing. Creating. What they call
Widgets.
We make things. We build things. We create something.
Right.
We're not creating a piece of paper that's traded on
Exactly,
an exchange
exactly,
someplace that has some kind of value that we're predicting whether it's going to go up or down. That's all good and well. So my point being is that primarily the people in the business are creatives, and we are making things, and there is sometimes, especially over the past several years, when people were making, coming up with an app or, becoming a hedge fund, that are making wildly huge, vast sums of money for an activity that we don't understand. I don't understand.
We don't understand. Yeah.
But what we do is we actually bring something into the earth. We bring something. You have a piece of dirt, we birth a house. That's pretty much what we do as an industry, and that is, I find that very, very satisfying.
It is very satisfying, and I know in the remodeling end of it, which I do, I'm a very creative person, and so it really satisfies that part of what I need satisfied, which is my creativity. And and like you say, that you become passionate about what you're doing, and you look forward to getting up and doing it every day. You know, it's really fun to do it. So I wanted to sort of get your perspective on that. So if you guys want to find out whether anybody works cheap, just go up to Home Depot and ask them, what do you get a day?
I personally get very suspect if I get a bid that's really way out of line.
Sure.
That's really low.
Sure, absolutely.
I get really suspect. And I typically, you know, it may be accurate. It may be what they're willing to do it for, but I really look really hard at it.
Question them. But it's the same thing if you're a homeowner and you're interviewing builders or remodelers, whatever. And and I always tell them this, you don't really need more than 3 quotes. I mean, to me, that in a remodel, and maybe not so much a build, but a remodeler, you're hiring as much of the person because you're going to have a close relationship with that person during a project. They're in your house. That's a big part of your decision. But if you take 3 quotes, this is where I'm trying to go with this. So you take 3 quotes, and you like you say, you have one that's really high, and you have one that's half. I would, before I go, whew, man, and this is what I've gotten over the year. Well, boy, you're really expensive. And I go, well, why don't you ask them why they're half my price? That's the thing I want to know, because I know what I'm quoting.
So you have to define the scope of the work clearly.
Yeah. There's reasons that happens. So what you're saying is that if you have a labor quote from one person that's half the price of the other person, is that a legitimate quote? And I think that's a great way to look at it, a great way to analyze it.
Yeah. If you've got, let's say you have 2 that are very close and one that's just really low.
Yeah.
You got.
Well, and then there's a whole nother discussion that we're not going to do today about this, and that's about the legal end of it with, I think that we'll end up having to deal with all kinds of, things they tried to do in the 80s to us on labor that weren't successful. They'll keep trying. So anyway, it's not as, my point being, it's not as easy to have somebody that's not legal working for you as it used to be.
Well, yeah, and one of your point, and I know you were heading it, and then it's another discussion. But the reality is as a builder, we have to use the skills of several different companies. We have to use several different subs. There's 1,100 decisions that need to be made, and a very large group of subcontractors. And for you or I to decide, okay, if the government were to say we had to have all those tasks done in-house and they're our employees, or they become our employees, well then, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are building all our houses because that's what it's going to take, the wallet, someone to build houses.
Right, that's true.
So you're going to really kind of...
That's called reality.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the world that we live in. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what Alan does. Alan does ICF houses, and we're going to talk about if you have to spend so much more money to build a house these days, spend it in the right way. We'll be right back. Hey, don't forget to follow us on all your social media, like us on Facebook, subscribe and share on YouTube, and check us out on all your social media platforms. Don't forget to watch Remodel Revolution on your smart TV, on Texas Weather Tracker TV, on Roku, Android, Apple, and Amazon TV, Sundays at 1 and 3 p.m. Central Standard Time.